Hey, HR friends, welcome back. We're in the 4-6 emotional 6.5 day sequence, and we made it to the last 12 hours in this sequence. We're going to talk about the last half day, and that's what's right here in this white rectangle, okay? Now, we always start out by talking about this unseen electromagnetic pattern. You see, we exist in a mathematical construct. We're sentient beings in a space time reality, and because we're sentient, we're supposed to be working through our emotions in positive ways. Now, in this mathematical construct, we're actually connected to it through a defensive design. It's important to understand this design because this pattern right here that we've mapped out, once we map this pattern out, we realize this pattern is agitating our defensive design. And what this pattern does is it organizes all of our experiences in what we believe to be a chaotic way. The truth is, it's far from chaos. It's actually very easy to explain and very easy to understand, but very difficult to overcome. Now, we show you this pattern because even though we can tell you when you're going to feel defensive and when it's likely you're going to be agitated, that's not going to change how you feel. So that's why we do these forecasts. That's also why our forecasts are so accurate on how we can perceive when social tension is going to increase, for example. When this pattern increases, social tension is going to increase, and we're at one of those positions here where social tension is going to become noticeable. At the end of this sequence, you can see that third person agitation is becoming elevated. Now, we talk about the number 4. If this pattern reaches a number 4 at any of these top graphs that have to do with polarity moments, well, that's going to really manipulate our design. And at the third person level, this has to do with the bigger picture items that we invest in. This is when you're going to see nations feuding between one another. This is when you're going to see big things happening in the political or the religious scene. These are, again, the larger things that individuals invest in, and we all have a way in which we want this to go. We're all designed to see this differently, and when it doesn't go the way we want it to, well, that's what creates a lot of our reactions. So be very cautious in this next 12-hour segment as this is going to continue on here, okay? Now, the good news is first person agitation is actually pretty light. And when we combine first person with third person agitation, that's what this is here. You can see that we're well above the 4 here. Okay. This next 12-hour sequence is well above the 4. And at the end of this sequence, we're actually going to reach up into that 7 range. Now, this is only going to happen for a short period of time. Okay. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to create a lot of effects, both at the individual and the collective level. So in this next transition, when we get to the end of one of these sequences, it's about to change direction. And when we describe this, I try to describe it like an ocean tide. And what you can imagine here is that we're going to get to an ocean tide that's at a low tide. And when the tide gets to the low level, well, it's going to have to reverse and come back the other way. And when we get to that tidal change, that always becomes very difficult as well. It's going to be difficult to stay calm, and that's what we're warning you about here. Okay. So for the next 12 hours, and for that fact, for the next 36 hours, we really want you to be on your A game here. And we don't want you to be falling victim to your defensive design, because what that does is it makes you create stress. And that stress accelerates the aging process. And that stress accumulates to create future states of disease. And what it really does is that stress stops us from achieving the objective. You see, again, mathematical construct. We show this on our website. We can easily prove how this comes together. But again, the hardest part is overcoming the way this construct makes us feel. We're sentient beings. And the pattern above is stopping us from getting along with our families. You see, in the sentient space-time reality, we're all born into families. And we just didn't know this. We didn't know we were designed to be defensive. We didn't know there was an unseen pattern trying to keep us feuding and fighting within our families and stopping our interconnected families from coming together. Now, we're showing you this because we need you to overcome your desire and your feelings to avoid relationships. We want you to stop being destructive and negative in your relationships so that we can heal and patch our families together. And when we heal and patch our families together, there's a reward for this. You slow aging and you stop the progression of disease. Now, just getting along with our family members, that's half of the battle. Okay. The other half is understanding what we're supposed to be doing in this mathematical construct. And what you have to do is you have to invest your time to ensure that future families are going to have a fair, equal, and balanced experience. Now, in your day to day routine, Every single individual that's part of this family should be contributing to not only help their family, but all the families they share in their community and their region. At the individual level, they should be helping themselves, but they should also be making sure that what they do to help themselves helps every other individual they come in contact with, no matter where they are. At the national level, we need to be investing in our nations. Our communities have to come together, and we have to structure our nations in a way where they're going to strengthen and they're going to be better for future generations. And if we can do this at the family, the individual, and the national level, what we're going to do is we're going to create a balanced environment in the world. And what that ensures is it doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're on. It's all going to be fair and balanced because our team has committed to making sure that future teams are going to have pleasant and prosperous experience as they learn here. You see, this is an interactive learning experience. And the first thing we have to learn is how to overcome our emotions and our defensive design. Then we have to learn how to properly communicate between every level of our family, whether masculine, whether feminine, whether mature, or whether immature. We have to be able to coordinate and communicate, and we have to be able to help our family members work through their stress. And most importantly, we have to be able to talk about and encourage routines that are going to create better futures for every family and every member within that family, no matter where they exist. You see, you can get along as a family, but you could have some really unbalanced approaches that create all kinds of chaos in the world. You see, you could theoretically get along with all your family members, but at the same token, not be balancing your routines to ensure that future families are going to have the same experience or better one that you have. So you really have to do both here. And the more you balance, well, the better off you're going to be. Let me explain that. So, in this interactive experience we exist in, there are frequencies that teach us. We call these the governing frequencies. And these governing frequencies are connected to everything that exists, including the quadrants of our body. Now, if you're out of balance with teammates, or if you're out of balance with your routine, depending on which routines and which teammates you struggle with, well, these governing frequencies will let you know because those will be the parts of your body you'll experience damage to. If you're out of balance, you experience damage. If you're in balance, you can actually amplify your body's ability to heal. So not only can we tell you how to get healthy, not only can we tell you how to reverse and eliminate disease, but if you commit to your team, and you commit to a future where every future team is going to benefit from your choices, and you do this until your last day in this simulated experience. It's just a classroom. You get to graduate. You get out of this negative feedback loop we're in, and you get to graduate into a positive feedback loop. And I want you to think of this like heaven and hell because mathematically we prove this too. There's an existence where you suffer, and there's an existence where you really enjoy yourself. And we're currently in the one where we suffer. And by understanding the rules and by committing and overcoming your suffering and the way that your suffering makes you feel, well, that's the only way out of this. If you don't do this and you decide, well, I don't need to get along with certain people and I don't need to balance my routine, how I feel and what I get's more important to me, well, then you'll come back in here and you'll do this some more on this side where you suffer. We're trying to help you stop your suffering. We're trying to empower you to heal yourself and to have a better future, and especially a better future existence in that positive mathematical heaven. All right, so we prove this to you many different ways, but the best way is through firsthand experience. And that's what this 24-hour guide is about. Now, when we do the last half day, we're only going to talk about 12 hours. So the first 12 hours of this guide. Now, when we zoom this in, what we want you to see is the electromagnetics and how they align with the times during the day. And we do this for all 24 time zones. So come down here, you find your time zone offset. Once you have the proper offset, this will hold for 10 seconds. It allows you to take a screenshot of this. Now, this is for people that don't have good internet. If you've got good internet, you go to our homepage, healthreconnected.com, and there's a time bar that runs through this, and you can see exactly when you're feeling agitated and defensive, and you can see when other people are agitated and defensive, and you can reference this to see why. You see, every single time you get upset or the people around you get upset, and you check this little pattern right here, you're going to see that it's in an elevated state. You're going to see that at these peaks is when it's most probable that you're going to have arguments and that you're going to be having problems getting along with the people around you. And what the real problem is this pattern you were unaware of. You see, we thought we were fighting the people that we coexist with, but the truth is, we're really fighting our design and we're fighting how this pattern agitates our design. Now, this is going to be a challenging day. You can see that we've got quite an elevation here. So, what we have going on is we have a dual emotional polarity flip happening. That's what's keeping this up and elevated at a level 2. And you can see how that builds up and brings it to a 7. Now, look at the polarity flip. This kind of puts it into perspective. When the tide changes, like what we talked about up front, you see how this immediately drops down to 0 and this one immediately jumps up to 6. And in a split second, we're going to go from having third person stress or bigger picture stress, and it's going to transition into first person stress. Do not let this transition confuse you, and do not allow it to manipulate you. 1, don't get overexcited about the big picture, and 2, definitely don't fight with the individuals in your life about it. It is not worth it. It's only creating the stress that makes you suffer more. Now, that's the first 12 hours. Red alert here. And when we get into the next 24 hours, we're going to be back in 12, and we're going to show this sequence plus an additional 12 hours, and we're going to outline what you need to be cautious of about that as well. So the second way we prove this to you is through these alignments. Alignments is when two frequencies that are testing a specific part of relationship, when they come together and they amplify. And it's during these amplified moments that we can really point out how this pattern is connected to your body. So for example, this EP on the time side, this is going to be a 9.25-hour alignment, and it's going to affect the upper left quadrant. So during the time that the time bar is traversing through this purple line right here, it is highly likely that people are going to feel their left upper quadrant if they're out of balance with their routines at the larger level. You see, the upper parts of the body have to do with the national and the world perspective, and the lower parts of the body are connected to your individual and family perspective. And this has to do with how we're balancing our perspective and how we're using that perspective to guide our daily routines. Now, it's obvious that a lot of us have not been thinking about the national and world perspective when we've been investing time in our routines. How can we be certain? Look around. Our nations are feuding, and our environment is drastically starting to fall apart here. Things are starting to amplify, and this is because we have not been putting the time and energy to ensure that future generations were going to have stable societies and that future generations were going to have a stable environment. Very, very likely during this EP alignment that left shoulder or left upper quadrant or neck or headache or visual changes or anything to do with this upper quadrant is going to be affected in a negative way. Okay. Now, that's on the time side. So this is testing to see how our routines are. The other alignment we're going to talk about here is this 3-hour alignment. Now, on the space side, this has to do with how we get along with our teammates. This is actually going to affect the right side of the body. Now, this is how well do we get along with the mature members of the team? You see the yellow and the green, that's the mother and the father, and the son and the daughter, well, that's the red and the orange. Now, how do we get along with the mature members of the team? And it doesn't really matter. Let's simplify this. Every team member we got to be able to communicate with. Every team member we got to be able to coordinate with. Every team member we need to be able to talk and help them eliminate their stress. And every team member we need to talk about what we're doing in our routines and how we can work together to ensure that our routines are the most efficient and they're going to help the most going forward in the future. Now, if you're not doing this with your teammates, specifically the mature members, you're going to hurt in this upper right quadrant. This is biofeedback. You see, in this space-time experience, there's no such thing as unfortunate or accidents. This has to do with what you focus on and what you put that focus towards and how you spend your time and how you invest it in both your relationships and your routines. End of story. If your body hurts or your day goes wrong or your experiences go funky, and that's happening during these alignments, it's giving you biofeedback. It's letting you know, and it's trying to teach you how to do better, but it does this through your experiences. It just doesn't tell you, but we are. We're telling you how this works because we figured out how this math works. And the more people that understand this, well, the more they can use their body to guide better choices in the future. All right. Let's end this out here. We're going to talk about testing sequence briefly, okay? So in this first 12 hours, you can see that upper left and upper right are going to be tested heavily. Lower left and lower right, not so much. Now, what do I mean heavily? Well, if it reaches a 4 or above, that's pretty heavy. If it's below a 4, well, that's pretty light. And the upper two quadrants are pretty heavy. Now, makes sense, and there are going to be alignments up here that are going to test it. I always say this, if I was in practice, well, expect upper quadrant stuff. Now, this first person and third person graph, these are showing where the strongest frequencies are going to be in this next 12-hour segment. Now, there are 8 frequencies that we have listed here, and you can see 6 of the 8 are in the upper quadrant. So this is, again, just telling you exactly what to expect. Now, this is the other thing you see here. If you get right-sided quadrant pain during this next 12 hours, you're having problems with getting along with teammates. If you have left-sided problems, well, you're having problems with balancing your routine. And we can know this because there are no strong frequencies on first person on the left, and there are no strong frequencies in third person on the right. The same thing down here. If you get right lower quadrant problems, you're having problems balancing your routines at the smaller level, individual and family. If you get left lower quadrant problems, you're having trouble getting along with the younger members of the team. That's how beneficial these graphs are. And what these do is they help you understand where you need to invest first in order to feel the best as quick as possible. Now, I always say this, don't overcomplicate it. In truth, you just got to get along with every member of the team. And to do that, you have to overcome your defensive design. Then the other thing you have to do is you got to balance your routine. And again, that's going to be defensive design too, because our defensive design convinces us that we deserve better than others. And the truth is we aren't. We're all equals. Once you understand that you're no better than everyone else and that you have to contribute in a way that helps everyone as much as it helps you, well, then you'll be in balance with this. When you do these two things together, you don't even have to come to our website. You don't have to worry about these graphs. You just have to execute every day and you'll be just fine and you'll start to feel better and you'll slow the aging process and you'll get to graduate when you die. That's how that works. All right. Now, last thing we talk about is this unseen electromagnetic pattern, and we've already posted the rest of 2024. No more mystery. You can go forward in time until the end of this year. You can see when the pattern will elevate. And when this pattern elevates, social tension will elevate. When this pattern elevates, weather catastrophes will happen more frequently. That's how this works. When this pattern subsides, things will calm down for a bit. Now, we know the up and down that's causing all of the fluctuations in what we're experiencing. And this is what's been manipulating us and causing that organized pattern of chaos. And by showing you this pattern, what we're allowing you to do is eliminate the chaos and the stress in your individual lives. Now, when we get a ton of individuals that are invested in this, you see 1 or 2 people doing this, that ain't going to make any difference. But we get nations of people understanding this pattern, overcoming this pattern, we can smooth out our future. We can actually limit the amount of tension that we see at these larger levels. We can take chaos and we can actually create peace and prosperity and replace it. We can replace chaos and all of the stress it creates and heal our bodies together, heal our environments together. That's what we're here to help you do. That's what we're here and we're excited about to show you. But to do that, the first thing we need you to do is pay attention to this pattern and do the personal work to overcome your defensive design. From that point forward, it can only get better for you, and we can't wait to help you see how that works. We'll talk to you in the next 12 hours.